Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. Today we have a little bit of interesting potential 2026 news, which is Republican Congresswoman Nancy Mace is looking at a run for governor or potentially Senate primary in South Carolina in 2026. And I thought this is very interesting because in 2026, the governor's race in South Carolina, the current governor, Henry McMaster, is term limited by state law, so he cannot run for re-election. So Nancy Mace eyeing that potential seat is not something I would really consider much of a surprise, and even really potentially news. The very interesting part for me is the potential for a Senate primary in 2026 against Republican Senator Lindsay Graham. So I'm going to break down this article where I heard this first. This is from notice.org, and I saw this alert on X, so I'm going to go through this and just see what it says. Just weeks after winning re-election to her House seat, Representative Nancy Mace is already looking at a statewide bid in 2026, according to 4 sources familiar with the matter. The sources said Mace has been discussing 2 positions: South Carolina governor or a Senate race. Senator Lindsay Graham is up for re-election in 2026. But 3 of the sources said Mace is particularly looking at the governor's seat, which Henry McMaster has held since 2017 when he replaced Nikki Haley after she was appointed to be Donald Trump's ambassador to the UN. McMaster is term limited in 2026 and can't run again. Representative Ralph Norman of South Carolina has also said he's looking at primarying Graham in 2026, told Notice he's aware that Mace is considering a run for governor, but had not heard it directly from her. While one of the sources said Mace was also looking at the Senate seat, the other sources emphasized the governor's race was more likely since it would be an open seat and she would not have to go against one of Trump's closest allies. Mace declined to comment on this story. Mace was the first woman to graduate from the Citadel, came into Congress as a moderate. She was outspoken against Trump in the wake of January 6th, and I hold him accountable for the events that transpired for the attack on our Capitol in January 2021. But as her district shifted to the right, so did Mace, and seeking the spotlight a lot, she teamed up with former Representatives Matt Gaetz and 6 other Republicans to oust former Speaker Kevin McCarthy from his position. Early in the 2024 cycle, Nancy Mace endorsed Donald Trump for president, and then Trump returned the favor, endorsing Mace against a McCarthy-backed primary challenger. In the wake of her vote to oust McCarthy, South Carolina Republican had a 100% DC staff turnover in just a couple of months, and one staffer even described the environment as toxic. So, it's a very interesting situation, and I can tell from this article there's clearly a lot of points going after Nancy Mace, but that's not really the main purpose of this article for me. If you don't like her, you want to go after, that's a totally different argument. I'm more interested in the side where she's either running for governor or Senate, according to the rumor. And look, to be quite honest, running for Senate is a lot more of an entertaining option. In 2026, Senator Lindsay Graham, who is a 4-term Republican senator, is up for re-election. And as the article mentioned, Graham has not yet confirmed if he'll be running for re-election or not. It's also mentioned that Ralph Norman, the Republican representative, is currently exploring running against Graham. So Nancy Mace running against Lindsey Graham would be very interesting because it would, no offense to Ralph Norman, likely be the highest name ID challenger Lindsey Graham could really get in this race, unless the outgoing Governor Henry McMaster runs against Graham. But this would be very fascinating. On the turn of things, it is also interesting that the 2026 South Carolina governor election is also up, and Nancy Mace has been rumored to be a candidate for this one as well. The one thing that I did, doing a little bit of research on this, did find out was that apparently back in 2014, Nancy Mace actually, prior to being elected for Congress, ran for statewide office in 2014 when she challenged Lindsey Graham for his U.S. Senate seat. She did finish 5th in a primary of 7 candidates at the time, but she was also not a U.S. representative yet. So if she does decide to challenge Lindsey Graham, she actually does have experience doing so. Was it a good experience? Well, she finished 5th out of 7, so probably not, but she does have a precedent at least of trying and doing so. As for the Lindsey Graham side of things, in 2020 when Graham was last up for re-election, he defeated Democrat Jamie Harrison by only 10.3%. Which, as South Carolina goes, is actually not that big of an electoral victory. When you look at 2022, Senator Tim Scott was up for re-election. He won by 25.9% over his Democratic opponent. Looking now back At 2016, Tim Scott was again up for re-election. He won 23.6% margin of victory. In 2014, when Lindsey Graham was up again, he only won by 15.5%. So at least compared to Tim Scott, Lindsey Graham does not have the best track record at performing electorally as good as his fellow Republican senator. So what that says to me is, at very least, there's a real possibility Lindsey Graham could potentially be vulnerable in a Republican primary. I don't think a race is going to swing 10 points where Lindsey Graham would be in jeopardy of losing the state at the general election level, but at very least, I think in the Republican primary level, he could potentially be in trouble. So that's something very interesting I just wanted to point out. On the governor's side of things, the last time the governor's race was up was 2022. McMaster won this race by 17.4 points. And looking back at 2018, it was won by McMaster by about 8 points. So if whoever wins the Republican primary, if it is Nancy Mace, I think there's a very good chance she would go on and win this race, probably within a likely to safe Republican margin, more so on the safe side of over 15%. Certainly, I think the Senate primary aspect is the more entertaining and interesting aspect for the sake of this discussion, but this is something very, very interesting to watch going forward and see if anything materializes over the next few months. That will do it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please remember to give it a like, and if you really liked it, please remember to click the subscribe button, and make sure you turn post notifications on so you always get notified when I post a new video. That way you never miss one. Also, please remember to share this video with your friends and family if you really, really, really like the video. And remember to stay tuned because I'll be posting at least one video every single day leading up until Election Day. So I'd really appreciate it if you keep coming back and watching those videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in a future video.